There's things that photographers that have been in the industry for decades still don't know or is not their specialty, right? And so there's always going to be something more that you can learn. There's always going to be something that you could do better. So just having a confidence of fully understanding the client's expectations and then over delivering, for me is what kind of gave me that nudge to just get after it and go out there and, make it a business versus just a hobby that kind of brings in a little bit of money on the side.
Welcome to the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I'm Angela Nicholson, and I'm the founder of SheClicks, which is a community for female photographers. In these podcasts, I talk with women in the photographic industry to hear about their experiences, what drives them, and how they got to where they are now. This episode features Makayla Jade Harris, a US-based wedding photographer, CEO of the Printographers Society, and the youngest director of the Professional Photographers of America Association. Hi, Makayla. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
Oh, gosh. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. So I was thinking back to when we actually met. I don't know if you remember, it was at a party at a bowling alley hosted by Fundy Software in January 2020. And we were in Nashville for Imaging USA. Seems like a lifetime ago now.
Yes. Oh, my gosh, it does. It seems like a lifetime ago. And
much happened?
Yes. A lot has happened since then. I feel like, wow, gosh, I can't believe that it was that long ago that we first met.
I feel a bit like the pandemic years, let's call them that. It's almost like we kind of extract them from our lives, so we kind of forget about them. And you can't remember exactly how long they were. There was just this period where everything seemed to be in stasis. It was just frozen, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's so crazy because I feel like now when I try and remember when things happened, it part of the conversation is like, well, was that before COVID or during COVID or after COVID? It just feels like this transitionary period of a few years that kind of got lost in space, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it, actually. But as a wedding photographer, how did you navigate the pandemic from a business point of view? Because it must have been very challenging.
Yeah, that was, it was really challenging for multiple reasons. I mean, I think initially, we were kind of in denial. And so we were just, kind of acting as therapists for our brides of like, everything's going to be fine. And we'll, move the date a little bit, maybe a month, and everything will be fine. And so we spent a lot of our time just kind of taking on the energy and the stress of others, which obviously starts to get very heavy over time. And then, we went through this phase where it's like, oh my gosh, okay, we really have to accept the fact that this is going to drastically change the way we operate. And my husband and I are both full-time in the wedding business, in the wedding industry at that time. And it was the only source of revenue that we had. So it was a challenge. It was something every day we got up and tried to be innovative and figure out how can we bring in cash flow? How can we prepare for the future? How can we make our current clients feel valued and loyal? So that way we can kind of, get through all this together. But it was a struggle. It was a struggle, emotionally and professionally to get through all of that. And I think that, if I had to say the one thing that I can contribute it to is just trying to be innovative and finding different sources of revenue. Trying to get past clients to book outdoor portrait sessions, when things kind of opened up a bit, trying to get past clients to add on wall art if they didn't initially, or do more album sales, things like that, to just kind of round out the revenue that we weren't getting from the events that we weren't photographing.
I think as challenging as it was for everybody, when those opportunities came along, say you offered outdoor shoots, I think a lot of people just welcomed that as a kind of like a return of a little bit of normality and an opportunity to just do something quite positive during a generally quite worrying time.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's like nobody really knew what was appropriate or acceptable or the right way to do things. And we all wanted to do things the right way, but we're also trying to provide for our families, and there's not information, and the information that is out there is changing all the time. And so I think at that point in time, we were just doing whatever we could to get by and stay happy and be parents that weren't falling into an emotional dark hole. We have 2 young kids that we also had to make sure, weren't seeing us feel this downward spiral through such a dark time. And so we were just trying to do whatever we could to stay positive and, stay afloat. And I think many people were doing that. Many people were in that boat as well.
Yeah. I think it's a good point you mentioned the kids because, like you say, nobody really knew what was going on and what was going to happen. To try and explain it to them in a way that wasn't terrifying, but also made them wear a mask when they should, wash their hands and all of that sort of thing must have been quite tricky, but also kind of protect them from what potentially was threatening your livelihood as well.
Yeah, I'd like to say that, experiencing that as a family will be one of those moments that our kids look back on as being thankful for being a part of that, being able to see, when your back's kind of against the wall, how to kind of dig your way out again. But you just don't know, right? I think it was just such an uncertain time, and you don't know how a kid's going to view it. And like I said, the information is changing all the time, so the conversation changes all the time. So you just do your best. But I think it'll be something. I know for me, it's a time that I never thought I would say this, but going through something like that, I'm so thankful for everything that it's given me, and I'm so thankful for kind of the shift that, we were able to make as a family and as business owners as a result of something, that traumatic.
Yeah. So maybe we should scroll back a little bit and just talk about how did you actually get into photography professionally? Was it always going to be your career, or did you go through a career change?
No, I became a mom, and I was a business consultant at that time for a small firm. I took maternity leave, and, I wanted to have a longer maternity leave with my first, our son, and there wasn't really room for me. So I was actually laid off. And we were in this place where we had a new baby, a new home, and there wasn't really just discretionary income laying around for me. So I had to figure out how to make that work. And I really did not want to go back to the corporate world with a new baby. I had always kind of been passionate about photography, growing up. I did a lot of video recording with my siblings, and I loved the idea of being a photographer, but I knew nothing. I didn't own a camera. It was never in the cards for me to kind of build a business as a photographer. But that's kind of what I did. I said, okay, I don't want to go back to work. How can I make money? And I decided to pick up a camera, buy a camera. I think my first camera was like a Nikon D7000, right? I just went out and would charge like $50 for a photo shoot. I had, learned how to learn my camera settings off of YouTube, and slowly just kind of trained myself through different workshops and conferences along the way, and eventually built it into something that not only became a career for me, but also I was able to kind of take my husband from his full-time job in finance and have it be kind of a career and a business for the both of us, doing, photo and video side by side.
So from buying your D7000 to actually starting to take money from photography, what sort of time period are we talking about?
So what's crazy is, for me, it's kind of the opposite of the journey that most photographers took. Like, the business had to come first. I was providing for a family. I had lost my job. So the business was always the first priority. So I did everything that I could to improve the weakest area of my skill set in order to make more money, right? So initially it was like literally just learning the functions of my camera. Then when I mastered that, it was learning the exposure triangle, and so I would just build on that. And every time I needed more money, I would think, okay, how can I get better so that I can be deserving of more money? And I would just build on the weakest link of my skill set in order to, start to charge more. And that's always kind of how we ran our photography business, even up until, a few years into the business of like, okay, we want to charge more for weddings. Well, we need to get better at off-camera flash. Like, we can't just be natural light photographers anymore, or we need to have, better relationships with planners, or we need to have whatever it was. We were always looking for that weakest link. in order to kind of level up our business and provide more for our family.
I think that's fantastic. So it's a little bit like, you bought the tool and then you learned how to use it as you went along, but while using it for a business, that takes quite a leap of confidence. Do you think having a family that you needed to provide for, do you think that sort of shored you up in the confidence stakes?
Yeah, it's funny because every time someone asks me or I kind of talk through this, it's like, wow, that must have been so scary for you to just like go out and, try and charge money right away with like, not having a background in photography or full education or a degree or anything like that. And quite honestly, being underqualified. And it's like, yes, it was insanely scary. And I think that fear fueled me to overcompensate and overproduce and really wow the clients because you feel indebted. And so that is a little bit scary to kind of go out there and put yourself out there and charge when like you don't have that background or you don't have all the knowledge that you could have or should have. But at the same time, what's scarier is like not being able to pay your mortgage or not being, having to go back to a corporate world that you absolutely hated and were depressed in. So I think for me, it was just like, yes, it took a lot of confidence. Yes, it was scary. But if I continuously strive to be better and better, then, the $50 that I was making, I was delivering more value than that, even from the very beginning.
Fantastic. I think that's a great attitude. I often think through, what's the worst that can happen? And actually, in your situation, if you didn't earn money, then the worst thing is you might lose your house, you won't be able to feed the kids, and it's just a horrible downward spiral. But if you do some photography that somebody isn't particularly happy with, then the worst situation there is, well, they are a bit cross or you have to do extra editing or you do another shoot, so that the consequences are slightly less. And I think it helps sometimes to just really analyze what the important issues are.
Yeah. And I think just having the attitude of over delivering, there's things that photographers that have been in the industry for decades still don't know or is not their specialty. Right. And so there's always going to be something more that you can learn. There's always going to be something that you could do better. So just having the confidence of fully understanding the client's expectations and then over delivering, for me is what kind of gave me that nudge to just get after it and go out there and, make it a business versus just a hobby that kind of brings in a little bit of money on the side.
Well, there's nothing that quite perks you up like a really happy client who's delighted with what you've delivered. Really makes you want to drive forward and do more.
Yeah, for sure. And for me in the beginning, I came into the industry at a time when like this shoot and share was just all the rage, right? So sending out galleries was just the very standard form of delivery. And for me, I knew right from the beginning that I needed a better experience for the clients. I needed to make the most amount of money possible. And so right from the beginning, even in that first few years, I think I was only a photographer for maybe 1 to 2 years before I decided like, okay, I need to go into IPS or, I don't really even remember what the term was at that time, but doing these one-on-one post-session sales, because I can't be out every night photographing at sunset. I can't be gone every weekend photographing weddings. I need to be able to make more, but still be the primary caretaker for my children. And so I think having that experience was actually a way to over deliver for my clients. So being able to see their reaction to the photos, it was almost like I was getting a critique after every session. So I would show them the photos. I would be there with them. I would see their reaction. I would get the feedback on like, this one is amazing. I love this. And I would know whatever they didn't buy wasn't their favorite, right? So I was able to kind of use that as a business critique and a portfolio critique and still get paid for it. And so that experience really helped me launch into kind of being more of a sought after, a more desired photographer, because we were providing an experience at that time that had kind of faded away. It used to be the standard form of delivery to present your images to your clients. And then it kind of went away and no one was doing it anymore because there were easier ways to deliver photos. And, coming back through this resurgence and having that one-on-one time with my clients afterwards allowed me to have that personal connection. It also, when you're showing your clients in that emotional environment, they become more attached and their value perception of the photos is increased. So they feel better about investing in you as a business owner. And so they're more likely to go talk about you. They're more likely to spend more with you because of that experience and that relationship that you've built with them.
Now, for those not in the know, IPS stands for in-person sales. And I think that's really interesting because I've heard it spoken about as a tool for, making more money through promoting your products, your sales. But also, now you explain it, it is a fantastic learning opportunity for the photographer as well. Because like you say, if the client doesn't like an image or just moves on, you've got the opportunity to get a bit of understanding about why not, or just sort of learn what are the preferences of various couples or clients.
Yeah, and there's a lot of underlying knowledge that you gain too. I learned very early on that when you're a newer photographer and you're just like click, 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 and something's working, you're like, you don't want to leave it. You're like, it's working, I'm going to keep going. But when you take that into a sales room or in a presentation environment, it has the opposite effect. You don't need a million of the same. You need to have that variety. You need to keep moving. You need to keep trying new things because that's what they're going to buy. They're not going to buy images that compete with one another. Even though when you were photographing it at the time, like it felt like it was perfect, they're not going to want 17 of the same style photos. So you really have to learn, how to have variety, how to pull out emotion, because the emotional photos, the authentic photos are going to be the ones that they end up buying more of. It taught me how to use different lenses because I wanted to sell, bigger wall art. So I wanted to, I started my business in Boston where most condos are like 300 to 600 square feet. So I wanted to sell big wall art in small spaces. And the best way to do that is to have, the subjects be a little bit smaller, maybe not the main focus of the portrait. And so being able to see what people were buying and learning that in the presentation environment, in the sales environment, I was able to kind of apply that to my shooting style and just kind of make it go full circle and, continue to have higher and higher sales and become a better and better photographer.
I hope you'll excuse this interruption because thanks to Fundy Software, we have an exciting, easy-to-enter competition with 2 one-year licenses for Fundy Designer up for grabs. Fundy Designer is perfect for emerging pros and advanced professional wedding photographers because it enables fast and professional album design coupled with wall art creation and client sales management. Listen to the end of this episode and then email me at podcast@SheClicks.net before the 1st of September 2023 with the answer to the following question. Where did Makayla's family store their photographs when she was a child? Okay, back to the podcast. Now, you travel all over the place, don't you, for your weddings? Do you still do the in-person sales actually in person, physically there, or do you do them online more now?
So, I have been photographing weddings for the past 11 years. We started our studio in Boston where we did everything in person. Actually, we started doing it out of our living room. Then we moved into a studio. Then we moved to New York where our client base was all over the place. We had people in New York City. We had people in Boston. We had people that were destination. And so we had to learn how to do the same experience because I refused to go back to just giving the gallery. So I had to learn how to deliver the same experience in a virtual environment. And this was pre-COVID when Zoom was like something you had to teach people how to use, right? It wasn't a household name. So what's crazy is now it's so much easier to do that because Zoom is just another app on everyone's device. Everyone knows how to use it. There's not a learning curve on these like virtual video platforms. And so we were able to, it was a struggle learning how to do it virtually at that time. COVID gave us this kind of blessing in disguise where it taught the world how to do business virtually. And so as a result, we had taken all of our sales virtually, even before that time. But now this is actually my last year as a wedding photographer because I transitioned to running a company that does virtual sales for other photographers. So now we have a sales team that gives that experience for other photographers. And so you don't have to have a studio to do it. You don't have to meet with clients in person. You can still deliver a similar experience even without having that face-to-face, I guess, physical interaction and do something online via Zoom or a virtual platform. platform.
So that's another example of how your business has evolved over the years.
Yeah, it sure has. I mean, I didn't think, just kind of going, not to bring back the COVID talk, because I think we're all sick of it, but that is one of the things that, I was able to gain from that time period is I wasn't photographing as many weddings. I had been asked by other friends in the industry, like, hey, you do so well with these virtual sales. I really need money. I'm not photographing weddings. Can you help me out? Can you do this for me? And so this new business was really, I guess, it grew out of that, out of a desire to help other photographers make money when we were all kind of struggling. I'd already known how to do this because that's how I had built my initial business. And especially for wedding photographers, there's just so much opportunity in album sales. I think a lot of wedding photographers are afraid to do sales appointments with so many images or such a big gallery. And so we were able to just start by helping a few of our friends do that. And it just kind of snowballed into the opportunity that we were able to create for them, the success we were able to create from them to kind of grow that and do that for, kind of photographers all over the country.
I was going to ask you whether you find that you still have to convince couples to have a printed physical album or wall art, but actually maybe you need to expand that. Do you still need to explain it to photographers that they should be offering those sort of products?
Every day of my life is spent talking to both of those sides. Photographers are we are emotional, creative beings, right? And so it's very easy when you're trying to change anything about your business. It's scary, right? It's very scary. And when you're trying to change something this drastic, right? You're going from just delivering a gallery to asking your clients to invest thousands of dollars after they've already invested in your services can be really scary. Oftentimes you can lose clients. Sometimes if you're not communicating effectively, you can get upset clients. And so having those conversations with photographers of like, yes, this is scary. Yes, this is a change. Change is hard. You need to remind yourself of why you're doing it, right? Why are you doing this? For me, it was a number of reasons. I was dedicated to having a better experience for my clients. I was dedicated to being the best possible photographer from knowing nothing. And I was dedicated to providing a lifestyle for my family that didn't rob me of my time with them, right? And so that, when you kind of put all of those reasonings on the wall, this is the best option for that. And so having that conversation with all of we call them our partner photographers on a daily basis of like, just remember why you're doing this, because anything that's worth it is going to be hard. And there are going to be hard times. And there are going to be times when you feel like you're messing it all up and you feel like you're doing it wrong. And the easier way would just be to go back to the old ways and just send them to the gallery and never ask what they think and hope that they buy something. And yes, that's easy and it's safe, but it's not rewarding for anyone. It's not rewarding for your clients. It's not rewarding for you as a business owner. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly not rewarding for your family or those that you love and want to spend time with you. So having that conversation and helping those photographers kind of see it starts before they book you, right? So when you're speaking to your clients, you speak to them through your marketing and your language and your branding. And that conversation needs to happen before they even book you. From the moment they land on your website, from the moment they engage with you, whether it's at, from an album or a piece of wall art that they've seen from a friend or just your, showcasing those experiences, the reveal appointments, the sales appointments, putting that out there, letting people see what you do, letting them see what's different and why it's better, why it's valuable for them. That's kind of where that conversation needs to live to begin with. And then it really has to be ingrained and embedded in everything that you do. Because clients are going to, it's just how photographers like to go back to what's safe. Clients are going to want to go back to what they know. And right now as an industry, we've kind of taught them that the most common form of delivery nowadays is an online gallery that can just sit there, as like an insurance policy of like, you don't have to do anything with these photos now. They'll just sit there and they'll just be there when you're ready. And it's really doing a huge disservice to our clients and their families because they're not able to, relive those photos and feel that joy each and every day from seeing them in their lives.
Now, you spent, what you say, 11 years of your life developing yourself as a photographer, taking better and better pictures, developing your skill set, so you can shoot in a wider range of situations. How confident are you that you're going to be able to walk away and work with other people's pictures, help them make more money through selling wall art or albums, and not actually produce them yourself?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. And I think it's something that photographers stumble upon or allow them to be a roadblock, allow it to be a roadblock in their own business as well. We get so many photographers that are like, well, people will never spend thousands of dollars on my work. Like, I'm just not there yet. And it's like, I mean, I was selling thousands of dollars from trash images that I barely knew what I was doing right from the beginning. We don't have the right to judge what clients are. We don't have the right to judge what clients are willing to invest on their memories. Like, we don't really have the right to say, like, that moment in their life is not valuable enough to be on their wall, or that moment, because we're just looking at it from a technical standpoint. We're not looking at it from their eyes. And when you start to look at it from their eyes, you'll see, like, and maybe that's the benefit of starting to do IPS so early, was I was able to see, like, the photos that I was most proud of were not necessarily the ones that they were buying. And I was able to kind of dissect that and say, like, they wanted that photo because of the way the mom was looking at her, even though it's cropped weird and the exposure isn't perfect, right? Or they wanted that photo because it made them feel really beautiful about themselves, but it had nothing to do with the fact that I accidentally chopped their feet off, right? It was kind of like this learning experience for me of, like, people, we don't know what they value unless we look at it from their eyes and kind of drop the act of, like, this is a competition print or this needs to be a perfectly executed image. And when we start to view it from that lens, then all of a sudden we see our work as something way more meaningful and way more valuable. And maybe it does give you a little bit of confidence to actually charge more, or actually, ask for the purchase, or do the in-person sales, or whatever you might be struggling with. But we have partners now that we sell thousands of dollars, and they've only been doing it for, maybe a few years. And then we also have partners that have been doing it for decades, photographing for decades. Their couples are spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars on their wedding budgets, and they don't value the album, and they maybe don't upgrade anything. It's really just dependent on that person and what they value. And it has a lot less to do with, and I don't want to say that it has nothing to do with it, right? Obviously, we have an obligation to create well executed work, right? But at the same time, I think photographers just get so caught up on, these limiting beliefs and the self-deprecating belief of, like, well, I'm not good enough. My work's not good enough. I have so much more to do and so much more to accomplish. But you're really just getting in your own way, and you're getting in your client's way of investing in the things that are going to bring them joy, right? Of again, just being able to see them and relive them every day on their coffee table or on their walls.
So I guess it's about forming those connections with your clients and understanding those sort of little moments that happen at an event. If you're at a wedding, you might be photographing the couple, but there's something going on in the background, and you think they're going to love that when they see that. And it's picking up on those little things as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it's knowing your clients. It's taking the time to listen, more than just speaking at them. It's asking questions, and figuring out what they value, why they're hiring you, why they came to you in the first place, what milestones they're trying to preserve, what personality traits they want to encapsulate, and taking that and turning it into something that is completely priceless, because it's not about the product or the paper that it's printed on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it might be a good time now to go to the section that I call 6 from SheClicks. And I've got 10 questions from some SheClickers, and I would like you to pick 6 numbers. So we'll start from 1 to 10. If you could just give me a number.
Okay, let's start with 3.
3. Okay. How would you describe your photographic and editing style?
Okay, my photographic style, if I had to describe it, is clean, emotional, authentic, and I really try and nail it in camera. I don't do any editing. I use AI for everything. I barely touch it beyond that. When I'm photographing a wedding, I call during dinner or cocktail hour, or not a time of day when they don't need me right there. I might have my second shooter go out and capture, some candids of whatever's happening during cocktail hour while I go ahead and I cull through my photos. And then I submit them to AI at the end of the night, and then it's done. And I don't have to spend hours going through it the following week. I try and nail it at the time of the wedding, even sometimes if it takes me a little bit longer in the moment to just, dial it in. So that way I don't have to kind of lose enthusiasm sitting in Lightroom or Photoshop editing for hours or weeks beyond that.
Do you use an AI package to help you with the culling?
I don't, but I should, right? I haven't, I think I've gotten so fast at doing it because I'm doing it on a wedding day when there's so much going on that I just kind of have this like motion, that I can kind of come through really, really quickly. In the past, and this is probably years ago when those types of technologies first came out, I noticed that there were certain things like certain family combinations that were removed or certain things. So it ended up being more time consuming for me to go back and find the images that were missing than it was to just kind of do it quickly myself at the wedding. But I think it's probably come a long way since then, and I probably could check out some type of AI culling as well.
But I think it's what you said about, sometimes it's quicker because you've got a sense of, I know I took a really good shot at this particular point in the wedding. So you really want to get it and you're in the zone. So you can just click, click, click. Oh, there it is. You find the right one just quicker.
Yeah, exactly. And it's top of mind as well. So if you're doing it on the wedding day, it's fresh in your mind. It's not like, for me, if I've even let it go a few days, sometimes I totally forget, or you start to mix in busy season, you start to mix weddings together and you can't remember which one was which. So I like to do it all on the wedding day when I remember everything that happened and what was meaningful to the couple and, all of those moments that I know I'll need to highlight and maybe pull out for the album design. So if I get it all done then it's faster and because it's top of mind.
I think it's funny that you mentioned weddings sort of not so much blurring together, but just getting a bit lost in them. You sort of think, we've cut the cake, haven't we? No, that was yesterday. Different wedding.
Yeah, exactly. Especially on some of those weddings that, you have double headers or, multiple weddings in a weekend. And it's like, oh my goodness. And the last thing you really want to think about doing is editing them or culling through it. And you think like, oh, I'll just do it later. But I've learned from experience. I know myself well enough to just get it done. Otherwise, you'll be putting it off forever.
Yeah, you'll thank yourself at the end of the day or the next day. Okay, so can I have another number from 1 to 10? You did 3.
Let's try 5.
Number 5. Okay. What are the kinds of features that you look out for at a wedding venue? So do you have if you see a fountain, you think, right, that's it. There'll definitely be a shoot by that.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. Okay. So I've been doing this for over a decade now. So I like things to be, I've gotten to the point where I really look for a way to make the day as easy as possible on myself, my team, and my couple, but also, challenge myself enough to stay excited about the work I'm producing, right? And it's kind of this weird dichotomy of is having a recipe and knowing, kind of how to get what you need to get those safe shots and then kind of pulling yourself out and challenging yourself. I would say if there's features I'm looking for, when I'm kind of location scouting, I'm usually drawn to interesting architectural elements. So I really like utilizing staircases or alleyways or something that kind of gives an interesting architectural element that helps me frame my couple. So that way I can kind of create an emotional, authentic moment, but the image has complexity because of the different architectural elements that are incorporated.
Yeah. And while you don't want to follow a recipe, I guess if clients have found you through the images on your website and there's, particular set of shots that they like, that's why they've come to you. So that, if we've got a venue a bit like that one, we'd really like a shot like that, you've got to deliver it, haven't you?
Yeah, I think that's another thing that photographers kind of think too much into. And I think it's really just an ego thing or something that you're trying to compare yourself to other photographers because your clients don't care if they have the same photos as the other people at that venue because their friends are looking at the other people's wedding. They're looking at their wedding. And so I think we allow ourselves to get in our own way of like, oh, I can't reproduce the same images at every venue, or I can't, have the same set recipe I need to. And it's creating more work for you. It might even lead to upset clients because their expectations were what you shot at the last wedding. And now you're not delivering what they thought they were going to get because that was what they saw on your website or the galleries that you shared with them or the albums that you showed them. And I think really we're not thinking about our client's best interest when we make those decisions. I think we're thinking about our best interest and what the rest of the photographic world is going to think if we reproduce the same shots. I think it's important to challenge yourself, but I also think it's important to just put the client, if you're getting paid for an event or something like that, you really need to put the client's needs and desires first and their expectations first. And I think a lot of times that is reproducing some similar work at the same venue.
Mm-hmm. So could I have another number, please?
Okay, let's go with 8.
Number 8. Oh, what was it that made you realise the importance of providing an heirloom to families you work with? So, essentially your images or a print.
Yeah, I have a few, I had a few kind of early on memories of clients. Now, again, my motivation started from like a business perspective, right? And it had to. I wanted to make the most amount of money possible. And the best way to do that was to provide a better experience to my clients and get them to want to invest in these products afterwards, right? So it started from a not so glamorous place of like, I need to run a freaking business, right? But in that, I actually had these experiences with my couples that I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize that that's what this was doing, right? Moments where, I had a bride come in and she had seen her engagement photos and she said to me, I have never loved the way I looked in my photos. I always hate my photo being taken. I never love the way I look. I love these so much. I don't know what you did, whether it was posing or lighting. I don't know what you did, but I love the way I look in these so much that I want to see this every day. I want to see myself like this every day. So like, I know it sounds silly, but I want this photo on my desk and I want this photo in my living room. And that to me was kind of like this light bulb moment of like, holy crap, like it's so much bigger than just the money. This is actually impacting people's lives. And then that's kind of when I realized I need to do this for myself. Like I need to have this joy or these experiences in my own life. I started relating to my clients' stories of that. Like I also, have, in looking at my photos and looking at myself in photos, I have, self-esteem issues or, my husband and I are working in business all the time together. So like there are days when I'm like super frustrated and then I see the photo of us, on my desk with our kids at the beach and it's like, oh, okay, relax. Like it's not the end of the world. And so I started kind of giving myself these little blessings. And that's kind of where it grew to like, wait a minute, guys, like this is not just about a business model. This is about how we're impacting people's lives.
Yes, very, very powerful, I think. A friend of mine had a boudoir shoot. I don't know if you have those very much in the States, but she had a boudoir shoot. And she said afterwards that she felt it was something that should be provided by the National Health Service because she felt so good after it. When she saw the pictures, she just felt empowered and more confident. And I thought that was really, really interesting thing.
Isn't that so crazy? I mean, I think I've only done a handful of boudoir shoots for our brides that were interested in. It's never been something that I specialized in, but for me, seeing the transformation of someone come in like very nervous and not, unsure of what to do, and then by the end just leaving, looking and feeling and speaking like a whole different person. It really is a gift. So that's I really like that it should be part of the mental health plan. I really love that. It's true.
Okay, so can we have another number, please?
Let's go with 1.
Okay, right. So actually, this is a bit of a two-parter. So I'll tell you the first bit first. On your website, you say you will never influence the world by trying to be like it. Carmen would like to know how you make yourself different from anything else that you've seen around you. How do you set yourself apart?
Wow, these are deep. Okay, I love this. I think that being different and standing out is actually less about ourselves and less about us and more about how we engage with others and how we listen and we value others. And so I think that for me, my work is not necessarily stand out. My website is not necessarily stand out. My personality is not necessarily stand out. But the way that I'm able to make people feel by asking them the right questions, getting to know them, bringing out those emotions when I photograph them, making them have, feel something about themselves is how I like to stand out. Is I like to be remembered for impacting them and not necessarily standing out for my own personal traits.
Okay, that's nice. And the second part of the question is, what advice would you give to new photographers starting out in their business now? How do they find uniqueness in a world which is already quite diverse?
So I think that one of the most powerful things that I ever did when I was starting out was to stop looking. And this sounds so cliche because everybody says it, like, stop looking at your competition, focus on you. But truly, the more you visualize where you want to go and what that looks like, and you zone out and you just tune out and you turn off all the other noise of what he's doing or what she's doing or what they just photographed or their new gig or what that guy's got going on, it just gives you so much more power to be fully dedicated and committed to your journey. And that's where the real creativity and the real beauty and the real magic happens, because you're so tuned into what's right for you and what's on your path that those magic moments, those creative ideas just come because you're in such a good place. When you're spending all your other time comparing yourself to what everyone else has got going on, you tend to create what everyone else is already doing. So it has a reverse effect. You're trying to stand out by looking at everyone else, but in reality, you just end up being like everybody else. But when you really turn it internally and consider what you've got going on and where you want to go, that's when you start to, really stand out in a better way and be on a better path for you.
I think that's a really good point, actually. And it's reminded me of something you said at the outset, where you're saying you realized that you needed to learn how to use flash because you couldn't rely on natural light all the time. And I think that is a point where photographers can really start to take control, because suddenly you're not at the mercy of the sunshine or whatever shade you can find. You can control the light and really create the images that you want. You can make them look natural if you want, or you can make them look really dramatic, but you are in control.
Yeah, for sure. I think, there are so many tools and, gear these days is just crazy. You could overinvest, you can underinvest. It's one of those things, but I think that you could get carried away, right? And you want to learn the things that you need to learn, but you don't want to necessarily spend time. So for me, it was always about just figuring out, okay, this is where I am. This is where I want to go. What's in between that I need to learn or do in order to go from here to here? And that was just one example of that. I wanted to be more of a high-end wedding photographer, and I knew if I wanted to shoot bigger ballrooms so I could charge more, I needed to learn how to not just bounce flash, or how to not just rely on natural light. And so it was just kind of like a problem solving technique for me of like, I want, I'm an entry level wedding photographer. I want to be a desired, sought after, high end wedding photographer. Well, the photographers up here are shooting in ballrooms that I have no idea how to produce work for. How do I figure that out? Okay. And then once I can figure that out, what's the next step? And so, yeah, I think I've always used like gear and lighting in that way of like, how does it fit into my path?
Okay, so your fifth number is?
Let's do 2.
Okay, 2. Paula asks, too often our photographs live on hard drives and on phones. How would you advise somebody to move away from that? What formats or products should they use to help them get their images into the real world?
As I mentioned, the way that we have this conversation with our clients is through our marketing, right? We're trying to attract a very specific type of person. We're trying to attract the person that wants this. And then we're trying to kind of help them see how to invest in that even more. I like to use the example of like, there are IKEA customers and there are restoration hardware customers. And maybe in the UK, those are different. I'm not sure how that translates, but for us, an IKEA customer that shows up on a Pottery Barn or a restoration hardware or high-end furniture store website, they're immediately going to know that's not for them. They don't have to see a dollar amount. They don't have to see a price tag. They don't have to see anything. Just in the imagery, the language, the branding, the coloring alone, within the first few seconds of seeing that, they're going to know that's not for me. I need to go back to the DIY situation, right? And the same is going to happen for someone that's looking for an elevated white glove, high-end experience. They're going to show up on IKEA, and the coloring, the branding, the messaging, they don't, dollar signs not even involved. They're automatically going to say that's not for them. We have to do this in our own branding and marketing when we're trying to attract a specific type of client. And it starts with showing them a different end product, right? Right now, we show them, we're also guilty of showing them these beautiful portfolio images all over our website. But then they're only going to want beautiful portfolio images. They're not going to see it into the finished state, the albums, the matted print boxes, the wall art. So if we start by showing that, and this is what I do, right? You're basically saying, this is what I do. I take beautiful images that belong in your beautiful home, right? And you showcase all of these images, your beautiful work, but not just as a JPEG on your site. You showcase it in a print box or in a video header of wall art hanging on the wall, or a client flipping through an album, with tears or joy or whatever that is. You're reconditioning what the client's going to expect from you. And so automatically you're going to have this kind of polar reaction. You're either going to pull people in, and the people that are pulled in are going to be saying, oh my gosh, like I need that. I want that. Like I remember looking through my grandma's album. Or you're going to turn people away that just want to do it themselves. And that's okay too. But I think that messaging starts there, and digitals now have become part of life. So I don't think it's fair to just discount them or to just say, that thing that you want to offer to your client. But the way that I approach digitals is, yes, you'll get the digitals. There's backups. They're just backups in case anything happens to this. But the real value is in the tangible product. And when you're kind of like, I don't want to say dismissive, but when you kind of reframe it that way of like, no, this is what matters. This is what's important. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you a story about this client, or let me tell you a story about my own personal life, or let me tell you a story about why this is actually better for you. And the digitals, yeah, fine. Like you'll get digital backups of, whatever you purchase, or you'll get digital backups of, everything in the album, however you structure that. It's kind of shifting the conversation and showing them that the real value is in the printed stuff, that's the stuff that they're actually going to look at, and that the digitals are it's just a backup in case they need to reprint something or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about for enthusiast photographers who aren't working with clients, but they've got a collection of images that they built up over the years? How would you advise they start sort of moving towards actually getting pictures printed?
I think the strategy is kind of similar. I mean, it's different in that, like, it's not of a specific person, but really just showcasing that what you do is not just creating beautiful imagery. You're creating beautiful works of art that deserve to be hung on walls or in people's homes. And so showing that either on your website or social media or in, like a Shopify or an Etsy account, and having it be marketed as a tangible good and not just a digital item will help kind of shift the focus. And then, in terms of selling that, I've seen even portrait photographers or wedding photographers that have created kind of a print shop on their website that showcases, travel photography for sale or animal photography for sale, things like that. I also think there's a lot of like, Airbnb groups. I know for myself, we own an investment property that we Airbnb, and I don't want to fill that with photos of necessarily my kids or myself. And so we look for photographers that are, horse photographers or, fine art landscape photographers, and we'll invest in that work. It's photographic art, but it's still on our walls. So you could consider kind of, reaching out to those outlets as well.
Yeah. I think it's always good to have some sort of endpoint in mind for your photography. I mean, obviously, taking the photographs can be the enjoyment in itself, but it's really nice to evolve them beyond just popping them on your hard drive and people seeing a very pixelated version on Facebook. And what I've advocated in the past is that you have a folder that you perhaps just call print or something. And every now and again, you put some of your favourite images on there, and then you maybe wait until one of the labs has got an offer on, and then you get some printing done. And if you put those up in your house, in your home, then have a dinner party. Because there's nothing quite like having your friends around and they look at your pictures on the wall and they make some comments. I've been very lucky recently. I've gone to a few exhibitions where I've seen the images in advance in digital, and then you go and see them actually on the wall. And that's what makes you stop and look. You know, you can see images flashing up on a screen. You think, oh, that's really interesting. That's really good. But when you see a print, you know, you stand back, you go close, you have another look, you stand back, you turn to the person next to you and have a chat about it. And then, you know, you move on to the next one. I think that, you know, there's a lot to be said for giving your work that you're most proud of that kind of treatment.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, I think we, again, as photographers, we're kind of behind the computer. We're seeing our photos digitally so often. And it's just so rewarding seeing it in print because it looks better, it feels better, it almost becomes three-dimensional. There's so much you can play with different paper styles and different ways to kind of display your photos. One of the things that we started doing recently for our wedding partner studios that we're selling for is sending out physical teasers, right? So like it's just become the wedding industry and the teaser world and the social media world has just become so inundated. Clients are expecting, you know, same day edits. They're expecting a teaser photo on Instagram. They want a TikTok reel or whatever it is. And it just, it becomes so loud. It doesn't really do anyone. It's like a bragging right, I guess. So yes, I agree. Like that's great for marketing and things like that. But the real value is in the print. So it could cost, if you're a portrait photographer or a wedding photographer, it costs like 30 to $40 to send, you know, a print box in boutique packaging with like 5 to 10 8x10 prints to your client after a wedding as a surprise gift for them to see the quality of the photos versus what's posted online. That's going to help them want to invest more in the pages in their album or the wall art that goes in their wall, because now you're giving them a taste of how much better it is when it's actually physically printed. And so I think you're 100% right. Like putting things on the wall, getting the printed, just experiencing them and letting other people experience that will help you sell more in general.
Yeah. You and I both know Andrew Funderburg, the founder of Fundy Software. I don't know if you've ever been out on a shoot with him. You know, he does a lot of street photography. He has a little Fujifilm Instax printer in his pocket, and he'll take a shot of somebody. He'll, you know, get chatting with them, take a photograph, and he'll give them the print and the expression on the person's face when they get that. You know, they're so pleased. And it probably means he doesn't have to then email the picture to them. They're so pleased that they've got that print. But I've never heard of anyone doing that at a wedding. But I think that would be a really nice touch, because you can, you know, like you said, you know, after you've done your culling or whatever, you maybe send a couple of prints to the printer and just give them a little print to take away. It'd be quite nice.
Yeah, it's so crazy that it's something so small that just goes such a long way. And you're 100% right. Like seeing, first of all, we work our butts off as photographers. You know, we're always trying to over deliver to the clients, and we're wearing a million hats, and oftentimes we don't really get to reap the reward of the impact that our work has had. And so seeing that, you know, it is a gift that you're giving to your client, but it's also a gift that you're getting that reaction back and feeling that reward of like, wow, like I make a difference. Like I had an impact on that person's life, and that print is going to go on to live with them, maybe even after I'm gone. Right. And that's just, I think it's important to embrace those moments, because it's hard. It's hard running a business. It's hard. What we do is hard. And so I think it's really nice to have those rewarding moments to help keep us going.
It really is. Okay. So your last number, the last question, please.
Let's go with 10.
Okay. So, this is quite pertinent. What is the first print you remember seeing?
Gosh. So immediately when you said that question, the first thing that came to mind is where I grew up, at the top of our stairs in our family home, my mom she called it a deacon's bench. I'm not sure if that was like a religious, I don't really know why it was called the deacon's bench, but it was kind of this like, it was a chest, a bench that had like a folding storage, in it. And in that it was full of prints. None of them were organized. It was just little prints that, back then were taken on, had the film had been developed and we just threw it in the deacon's bench. And when we were kids, one of our we didn't have cable, we lived in the country, we didn't have like television or internet at that age, we didn't have any of that. So one of the games that we would play is we would open up the deacon's bench and we would literally reach in and pull out a handful of prints and just either laugh at how funny we looked when we were babies or how funny our dad looked when he was, that age, and or make up stories, and we would just make up stories about what was happening in those prints. And so it's not something in particular that comes to mind, but it's almost every single, like all of my sensory emotions are coming into play when you say that. It's like, I remember the top of it was so heavy, it would take two of my siblings to like get it open. So we would open it up and then you never wanted it to close on your fingers. That was like one of the scariest things. And you open it up and just the smell of the printed paper from inside the box. I mean, so that's one of my favorite memories, is just having this box full of like family photos and reliving that with my siblings.
Oh, that's really, really lovely. And I think it kind of taps back to some of the whole of the conversation we've had while you've been talking about business. Actually, it's all about capturing emotions and, helping people remember special events. And just, family photos are so important. Yeah,
it's crazy to think like how this generation of children are going to have those moments together. Are they going to, what is that going to look like if you're not printing family albums, or you're not printing vacation books, or you're not bringing it into the tangible world? What will that look like when our kids have those moments with their siblings or their kids? Is it going to be on a device that's extinct, or is it going to be, is it going to pop up like as a hologram in our, I don't know. We don't know what that's going to look like decades from now. Right. So, having a way to preserve that, so that way our kids do get to have those moments with their siblings, or they do get to have those moments with their kids is super, super important to me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. So, Makayla, it's been an absolute delight speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, this has been just so awesome. I probably got carried away, but you were speaking to all my favorite topics. So I really enjoy those conversations. So thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all the beautiful questions that you guys brought to the table. I really, really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll add links to Makayla's social media channels and website to the show notes so you can keep up to date with what she's up to. I'll be back with another episode soon, so please subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform and tell all your friends and followers about it. You'll also find SheClicks on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube if you search for SheClicksNet. So until next time, enjoy your photography.